UFOs have been reported by men and women from across every walk of life and every culture. It will hardly come as a surprise that those who make their living in the skies have also seen their fair share of unidentified flying objects. There are numerous cases of pilots encountering UFOs, and these accounts are some of the most credible and dramatic cases reported. However, many pilots that have seen UFOs kept quiet about it for fear of losing their jobs. Here are 5 unexplained aircraft paranormal encounters. Number 5 Alderney sighting, 2007. Captain Ray Bowyer got quite the fright while piloting a passenger flight from Southampton, England to Alderney in the Channel Islands on April the 23rd, 2007. Bowyer and the passengers on this plane witnessed 2 UFOs across a 50-minute period. The UFOs were said to be so large and imposing that even Bowyer, with his 18 years of experience, wanted to get away from them and land his plane as soon as possible. Bowyer's aircraft slowly converged on the 2 stationary cigar-shaped crafts. The crafts were emitting a bright yellow light. The objects appeared large to the naked eye, even though they were originally spotted some 55 miles away, and Bowyer later estimated that the crafts were easily up to a mile across. He also viewed the craft through his magnification binoculars, through which he was able to make out a solid form, saying that this form grew clearer as the plane drew closer to them. Bowyer said of the incident, "I found myself astounded but curious, but at 12 miles distance these objects were becoming uncomfortably large, and I was glad to descend and land the aircraft." Many of my passengers saw the objects, as did the pilots of another aircraft 25 miles further south. That plane came from Sark in the Channel Islands and confirmed the presence, position and altitude of the first of the objects from the opposite direction. Bowyer's encounter was investigated thoroughly, but no answers to the mystery were ever found. Bowyer continues to maintain his position that whatever it was he and his passengers saw that day was not something found around these parts. Number 4. USS Nimitz radar visual encounter. On November the 14th, 2004, at around 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, 2 airborne US Navy fighters received a message from an operations officer aboard the USS Princeton, a guided missile cruiser. The jet fighters were from the USS Nimitz, and they were instructed to change course and investigate an unidentified blip that had appeared on the radar of the USS Princeton. One of the fighters was piloted by Commander David Fravor, who had his weapons systems officer with him in the back seat. The other jet was piloted by Commander Jim Slate. The weather that day was about as perfect as it could be for flying. There were clear blue skies with no cloud cover above the craft and a calm sea below them. When the FA-18F Super Hornets arrived at the location of the radar blip, the 4 men in the craft could see nothing special in the air. There was, however, something below them. They spotted what they referred to as an object the size of a Boeing 737 airplane, but with a smoother area of lighter colour at the centre. It appeared as if the waves were breaking over a large object hidden just under the surface of the water. A few moments later, the crew spotted a strange object hovering around 50 feet above the shape in the water. The pilots would describe the unidentified flying object as looking like a large bright tic-tac between 30 and 46 feet in length. The object had no apparent engine or exhaust plume as far as the pilots could see. As Commander Fravor began his circular descent down towards the object, the UFO began a curved ascent, maintaining a safe distance from the F-18 and appearing to monitor its trajectory. Fravor attempted to plunge the fighter down below the object but didn't succeed. The UFO quickly accelerated and disappeared from his sight within a matter of seconds. The nature of these objects and their origins remains, at least officially, a complete mystery. Fravor spoke about the flying Tic Tac encounter publicly in 2017 as part of an ongoing public attempt to draw attention to the UFO study program the Pentagon was running at the time, which was supposedly shut down. Officially titled the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or AATIP. Number 3. The death of Thomas Mantle, 1948. 25-year-old Kentucky Air National Guard pilot Captain Thomas Mantle lost his life on January the 7th, 1948, while pursuing an unidentified flying object. Mantle had received the Distinguished Flying Cross for his actions during the Battle of Normandy in World War II, and was one of 4 pilots ordered to investigate UFO reports by the 156th Fighter Squadron. The reports were coming in from several military bases in Kentucky that afternoon, including Clinton County Army Airfield and Goldman Field. Military personnel reported the aircraft as being up to 300 feet in diameter and with a red border on the bottom of the craft. The pilots maintained radio contact with the control tower at Fort Knox and were ordered to approach the object. However, the object had reached a considerable altitude by this point and was now a mere speck in the sky. The pilots were advised to break off direct pursuit of the craft and level out their altitude. Mantle ignored the suggestion and continued to climb higher in pursuit of the craft. As he got closer and closer to the UFO, he reported that it appeared to be metallic and was of tremendous size. These would prove to be some of his last words. It's believed that Mantle passed out due to lack of oxygen, and no matter how it happened, he lost control of his plane and it spiraled towards the ground, crashing on a farm south of Franklin, Kentucky. The Air Force's official reason for Mantle's crash remains undetermined. Number 2. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich, 1978. Another example of an aircraft appearing to disappear during a UFO encounter came on October the 21st, 1978. At around 7:12 p.m, 20-year-old Frederick Valentich left Moorabbin Airport near Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, and was piloting a Cessna 182L light aircraft when he and the aircraft vanished over the Bass Strait between Victoria and Tasmania. Shortly before disappearing, Valentich advised Melbourne Air Traffic Control that he was being orbited by a large craft around 300 metres above him. Valentich described the craft as being long, with a shiny metal surface that had a green light on it. He would report that the craft was approaching from the southwest before making what would be his final communications to Air Traffic Control, or indeed to anyone. These words were, "The strange craft is hovering on top of me again. It's hovering and it's not an aircraft." That statement was followed up with 17 seconds of what he described as metallic scraping sounds. No sign of Valentich or the Cessna he was piloting has ever been found, and the reason for his disappearance remains a mystery. Number 1. Japan Airlines Close Encounter, 1986. The case of the Japan Airlines Close Encounter, which involves a Boeing 747 cargo plane heading to Tokyo from Paris, is one of the most compelling examples of aircraft getting dangerously close to unidentified flying objects that appeared to be of extraterrestrial origin. It was November 17th, 1986, at around 5:11 p.m. local time, when veteran pilot Captain Kenju Terachi was around 35,000 feet above northeastern Alaska when he and his first officer and flight engineer spotted some unusual lights around 2,000 feet below and to the left of the 747. A few minutes later, the lights changed position and they suddenly appeared to be directly in front of the Boeing. They were also now much closer, so close that the light coming from them lit up the cockpit, and Tarauchi claimed to have been able to feel the heat on his face. The object now resembled two pairs of square-like arrays of pulsating amber and whitish lights. Captain Tarauchi estimated the objects were around the same size as a DC-8 jet. The objects changed position again, and this time positioning themselves side by side. Tarauchi contacted Anchorage Flight Control and asked if they were tracking anything near the craft. They said that they weren't. Tarauchi noted later that the communications with Flight Control were garbled for several minutes. The interference appeared to be generated by the UFO. As the objects moved further to the left, the pilot noticed a third UFO around 8 miles away. It also appeared on the radar of the Boeing and remained on screen for several minutes. Whatever the new object was, it was massive. The two smaller objects flew off to meet the other object. Tarauchi later referred to the massive Saturn-shaped UFO as the mothership and estimated that the craft was around the size of 2 aircraft carriers. After a long and tense 30 minutes, Tarauchi and his crew finally lost sight of the UFO and were able to safely land the 747 at Anchorage, whereupon the FAA launched an investigation into the incident. The FAA concluded that they were unable to confirm the event and that a split radar return was involved. In December 1986, Captain Tarauchi gave an interview to 2 Kyoto news journalists. JLL soon grounded him for talking to the press and moved him to a desk job. He was only reinstated as a pilot years afterwards. Meanwhile, debunking group CSI-COP concluded the captain and the crew had just misidentified the planets Mars and Jupiter. Years later, John Callahan, the former division chief for Accident and Investigations branch of the FAA, testified publicly that he had first-hand knowledge the CIA had covered up the flight data relating to the incident.